Yeah, we've got people trickling in. Good morning, everyone, as you start to join. Actually, good afternoon, because we are at the 12 o'clock mark in the UK. Appreciate not everyone is joining from the UK, though. So we'll literally give it a minute to get people in, and then we will get started, because we haven't got loads of time. So I can see the numbers creeping up. Always really hard this when you can't see people, anyone else's faces, can you? So you're thinking, where are they? What are they doing? Having a cup of tea, having lunch, having breakfast, depending where they are. Give it 30 seconds or so, and then we will get started. Oh, here we go. This is what I like to hear. I like to hear and see where people are. So we've got someone from Stockport. And actually, Isabel, it's also raining here. So where I am. Always a hard transition. I'm always ready for autumn, but then the reality is I'm actually not ready for it at all. Not ready for the weather. There we go. Yeah, got more rain, rain everywhere, it would appear, in the UK. So that's something we've all got in common. Right, what I might do is I think I'm going to get started now. So we are recording this session as well for anybody who joins a little bit later. So first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining. We have got an hour packed full of content now for you, all about neurodiversity, and in particular our Neurodiversity Index. Before I get into the agenda and what we've got coming up for you, I just wanted to position really why we're facilitating this conversation and why we are interested in this as a subject area. So City and Guilds, for those of you who might not be aware, is an organisation all about skills development, and particularly through the foundation, of which I'm part of, we really are focused on reducing and removing the barriers that people face to accessing skills development. And a few years ago now, we first got introduced to Professor Amanda Kirby, who is going to be delivering a big chunk of this webinar today. And we knew that we were working with groups like prisoners, ex-offenders, refugees, women in male-dominated sectors. But actually, no matter what these target groups of people were, sort of depending on where they were bucketed into, a lot of what they had in common as well was some sort of neurodivergent characteristic. For some of those individuals, it was undiagnosed. For others, it was diagnosed. But what was clear to us was that it actually wasn't just one barrier they were facing. It was multiple layers of barriers that needed removing to help them access skills. And we knew it was a lot harder for the groups of people we were supporting anyway. So we got a little bit interested in this as a subject area. I'd like to say we're a little bit of ahead of the curve before it became perhaps a little bit of a trend for some organisations. We were really keen to just get involved and find out what we could do to just help this subject area. So we created our Neurodiversity Index in partnership with Do It Solutions and Professor Amanda Kirby, and the results sort of said what we thought we were going to hear and see from individuals, both in organisations and answering on behalf of an organisation, but also just as an individual, as a parent, as an individual with a neurodivergent characteristic. It was all different types of people. We did it again last year, and we're really pleased that today kickstarts our survey opening for next year's Neurodiversity Index. So with all of that in mind, I'm just going to very quickly introduce you to who you've got here today, and then I will hand over to them. So first and foremost, we've got Professor Amanda Kirby, who is one of our City and Guilds Fellows. I'm very pleased to say, I'm very proud of that. But Amanda is also, she's got a number of accolades sort of behind her, but most importantly, she's the founder and chief exec of Do It Solutions, with who we partner on this work. We've then got Rachel from Specsavers, and we're also going to have Amy from Specsavers as well, so really giving an employer perspective. Got Lisa Owen from St Giles, who's going to be joining us in a bit to talk about her experience there. And we've got Charmaine from City and Guilds, who's our head of DEI. So she's also going to be sort of taking us through some of the agenda today. So kicking us off, we're going to start with Amanda. We will have time for questions later. You can use the question box at the bottom, and I'd really encourage you to do that. Just keep them coming through. And obviously, you can also use the chat functionality as well. So Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And it's a delight to be here and working with the City and Guilds Foundation for a third year, even bigger, better, more exciting. And we really want your help and support. So what I thought I would do is kick off with what we learned the last couple of years. And then after that, we'll have a bit of time for questions and then share what other people are doing as well, because this is all about the index. It's not just about getting data and measuring where we are and comparing. And this year, more than ever, we want your stories. We want the data, but we want your stories, because I'm going to make sure we bring those themes out, which are really important. Now, what we've seen, having data from 22, 23, now 24, and we'll be publishing it in 25, we can start to see the trends. And I think that's important. I mean, Polly was talking about being ahead of the curve. What we've got to make sure is the curve goes up and it doesn't go up and then come down again. And people don't think neuro-inclusion is a thing we've done now and not something we're going to do again. So we can see there are trends where we're getting more people doing some things. So general awareness training went up, which is good, but it's not going to make that lasting change, which we really need. We're seeing some senior manager training increasing from 22 to 23. And I think what we saw much more this year was some managers training coming in as well. So senior leadership training, really important. We've got to start at the top. So we ask each time, and then we go into more nuanced questions as well. How well are organisations doing at supporting and retaining neurodivergent employees? And I just pulled out, you can see the report, you can read the report, but I pulled out a few things that I think are important. 35% of organisations said their websites were accessible. We have lots of places that weren't sure whether accessible or not. So just thinking about that makes us go and have a look and check and see what we can do to make improvements. 52% of companies with and organisations, we had a whole spread from small to huge organisations, reported having adapted recruitment processes. That's good. That means they were starting, but we've got a long way to go. And what does it mean? It could mean everybody getting the questions beforehand. Brilliant, great, why not? It could be just having a conversation and putting a tell us if you are neurodivergent tick box. Not so good, because people then have to disclose to share. 1 in 3 had reviewed job descriptions. So we've got a way to go. And then we had a level of commitment. And what we need to be seeing is that commitment on the rise this year. Or are we getting sort of wobble saying we've done it, we've done the awareness and we're moving on? And I think this is really important as we move through into the next phase of inclusion. We're really thinking about inclusive practices, not just neuro-inclusive practice, but inclusive practices. I'm really interested in how we not just attract but retain talent as well. And only 28% of organisations had peer mentoring processes in place. Well, let's see. I'm hearing they're coming along, but we've really got to think, what does peer mentoring look like? And I think there's a lot of work to be done there. 21% of organisations don't have any process to a promotion. Now, how are we? And the mentoring might be very important in doing that. And we're going to ask more about that this year. Now, what's stopping people getting and progressing? Well, this is what we're hearing. The top 3 things that cited were lack of opportunity. How can I showcase my skills effectively? Really important. Where do I go to get support in a timely manner so I don't lose confidence and then I lose competence as a consequence? How do I manage this home balance? And we've seen over this year this shift between hybrid working, home working, in-person working, and who does that really challenge most of all? So we're going to look at that more. 43% of organisations had neurodiversity champions. How do we grow that? We can see from the research that disability champions, where we've looked at long-term studies, have really shown that's been important, but we've seen a slight dip this year. So again, awareness, right, but are we putting it down and into across the organisation as well? 30% of organisations knew about access to work, but not all of them. All right. So what do we need to? It was up, but we need to go a bit further about where do you go if somebody needs some help and support within the organisation, but also outside the organisation, and what is available to you. Last year, we looked at in detail, it was really interesting being a parent of a neurodivergent child, and 39% of respondents had a neurodivergent child. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I have a really neurodivergent family. I've got neurodivergent children and grandchildren. So it's not surprising because we know there's a genetic basis as well. 10% were currently waiting for their child to have a diagnosis. We know there are challenges across the UK at the moment with waiting lists. This year we went to America, we went to Australia, we want to go globally. So really, I want to go out there and try and get more information about what's going across the globe, not just the UK. 27% think their child may be neurodivergent. Wow, right? And importantly, 36% said it had impacted on their work. Parents are carers, and that position of being home to look after your child when they come in if they've had a bad day. I know if your child's had a bad day, you're going to have a bad evening and possibly a bad night if they've had a bad day at school. So we need to be understanding about parents who are carers. And what we could see is those parents, that support has an impact on their ability to work, but also gaining those adjustments in the workplace is really going to be important. And this were some of the comments, and I think this is where we want to go today. Hard to get a child to school if they're having a bad day. Hard to get husband to share their mental load given his diagnosis. We've got this complex mix. And if we're going to attract, retain, and allow people to flourish, we've really got to think about people as a whole. So more of going in depth this year. We know that diagnosing, some people want a diagnosis, can't get a diagnosis. Remembering that in the workplace, you don't need a diagnosis to get adjustments. So just keep remembering that. But what are we hearing about? The key workplace challenges, 1 in 3 not satisfied with their current work settings. 20% said they had some quite significant delays. And this was an increase, a delay in getting support and adjustments. And I think this is really important about how do we have that conversation? What stops us having a conversation? Because sometimes it's just, we know that most adjustments are low cost, no cost. What's stopping them do so? And I think, you know, this is one of the things we were looking at. My employer's unaware as I've taken some time off during the day when I've been struggling emotionally. Sometimes we don't know what somebody's doing underneath the table, that waggling as a swan, keeping yourself afloat. And sometimes we don't know the impact that has on your day-to-day functioning. And I think a lot of us mask a lot of the time. 21% of people had reported having poor relationships with their managers. Is that because we are having this awareness about some conditions, but we're not having awareness around having good active conversations? 50% of people in the study showed, and we had, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people responding, an impact on their physical and mental well-being. And we know this is a broader issue in society where people seem to be having challenges. I burnt out regularly. This was a theme that was coming out. And this burnout of I'm trying hard, get exhausted, get burned out, and this cycle of trying to achieve my best. So what can we do differently? Have a good line manager relationship, that conversation, not having to mask your identity and hide your struggles. That would be useful, but you need to have safe spaces to do so. And leaders, let's start at the top, speaking up about being neurodivergent if they feel confident to do so. Now, what are people doing well? And I'm going to hand back and we'll take some questions. We heard that taking candidates for casual coffee meetings, offering extra time, stating that neurodivergent candidates are welcome to apply, offering various interview methods, allowing candidates to re-record video applications. There's nothing more frustrating than I've done it once, done it badly, and that's it. I don't have another opportunity. That's ridiculous. We're losing talent by doing that. And reinforcing all the way at all stages the message that adjustments can be requested. You don't need a diagnosis to get support. And team members sharing their own neurodivergent characteristics publicly, fostering this neurodiversity friendly culture. And these were coming from your responses from the City and Guilds Index last year. And what we want to do this year is listen to you, take the information, take your experiences and share that widely so we can learn from each other. Things like offering work trials instead of traditional interviews, all of those things, not having medical proof, and continuous work towards improving those practices for neurodivergent candidates. And we hope together we will be able to do that. Now, there's lots of information in the City and Guilds Index this year. Next year, we're going to have even more rich information about what you can do. We've now got the 22-23 barometer, and we can start to see what the changes going up and down, and we'll have the 24 one soon as well. We need your help. So I want you, everybody who's turned up today, is go and tell 5 people, take 15 minutes, have a coffee, have a cup of tea, have a glass of water, and I want you to complete the index this year. We need you to find out more about what is working well and what's made a real difference. Your data makes a difference widely to many people. So I'm going to hand back to Polly and take some questions.
Thanks, Amanda. That there was lots of information in there, and on purpose, really, I think, to show everyone that we've got lots of data already. We want to get even more data, and I think the beauty for us as well is to be able to compare it. And we knew in year one we weren't sure of the benchmark, we weren't sure what we could compare it to. Year two was brilliant because we were able to see some things improve, which was fantastic. But other things we knew, you know, like the parent data that you talked about, Amanda, that didn't come out in year one, but really came out in year two. So I think there'll be lots that comes out, but as you've said already, we really need people to complete the survey in the first instance. We have had a couple of questions come through, so let's take them. So the first one is an anonymous question from someone, and really the crux of their question is around what training is available for those who prefer not to have a label but still need support and understanding in the workplace. And that's quite common, I think, isn't it, when people don't want to be defined necessarily by a label, still need the support. So if you've got any advice or
Yeah, I think it's really important. First of all, you don't need a diagnosis to have workplace adjustments put in place. We've got to, you know, crack that one. So because people are often thinking, I need the diagnosis for the workplace adjustments. No, the job you're in, the task you're doing, the environment you're working in, all of those things, what's worked for you before. Now, if you're going into a new job or new training, you may not know what adjustments you require at the moment. And it may take a regular check-in with your manager to go through what's working, what's not, and trial and error a bit. So the first thing is, don't have a diagnosis. Think about your strengths. What's worked well in other settings? If you've been in school or you've been in training or you've been in another job, was it 5 minutes every morning to check whether things have gone right? Did you need to have an email with things in bullet points so you knew what order to do so? Did you need the opportunity to clarify things if you didn't understand it? Do you need speech to text software because writing it you made lots of spelling errors? You know, try to work out what your strengths are and what you've used effectively and what your challenges have been elsewhere, and talk with your line manager about this place. If it's a new place, what are the rules of the place? What are the meeting rules? What are the dress rules? What happens at lunchtime? What happens after work? You know, find out as much as you can about the organization. Then you know what to ask. Ask who to signpost to as well. Who else do I go to if it's not the line manager? Can I ask other people as well? And by having that, there isn't a list. I think we've got to move away from a Noah's Ark principle that we're hiring for 2 of these, 2 of these, and 2 of these every time. Right? And we're going to have a list that the dyslexics get this list of adjustments and the dyspraxics get this. It's rubbish. It's a complete waste of time. So it's feel confident to explore and not get it right on day one, and ask for help. I think that's the other thing. Often we wait too long.
I think as well, if organisations are truly on this neuro-inclusive journey, actually you will find that more adjustments are being made, and that's why we need to keep promoting this work to all organisations. Another question is, how can we find employers that understand neurodiversity and have a system already in place for all of these different working styles? So is there a place in which we're able to, you know, a list of really great employers effectively in this space?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So we do give out neurodiversity friendly awards. We also disability confident. The government campaign also is a marker of showing interest in ability, equity, and disability as well, and inclusion. So seeing disability confidence, the progression, there's 3 levels. There are some awards around. Look out for some more coming your way as well, really markers. I think the important thing is ask as well. If they're not saying in the job adverts, right, we support people for whatever your needs are, we're here to support you and provide you. Action speaks louder than words, right? So what are they doing to show they're inclusive? What do their colleagues, if you go for an interview, what's it like? If you're applying for a job, what do they do? And you'll see pretty quickly whether this is a neuro-inclusive place. And I think it's hard, but because sometimes the badges don't always translate into actions either.
Walking the talk, isn't it?
Walking the talk, exactly.
we've had two more great questions which we'll get through, and then we'll go on to the next part of the agenda. So the first question is around any sort of low cost or no cost accommodations that organisations can make to become more neurodiversity friendly. And I think that's an important one, because we know budgets are ever constrained, but I'd like to believe that people would all want to make these adjustments, but sometimes hands are tied. So what are some of the, and we've got lots of tips in our neurodiversity index previously, but yeah, any top tips?
Have a conversation rather than not have a conversation. Doesn't cost anything. Delay loses confidence and competence. Okay, so don't not have a conversation with somebody. I think regular check-ins. I think we underestimate the value of, okay, how are you doing? Do you want any clarification? Because if you're lacking confidence, you may not ask for help. And having somebody who's supportive, that will really be helpful. Find out what you've got on your systems already. Microsoft Office, Teams, Immersive Reader. We've got loads of tools, speech to text, text to speech tools, all in our systems, on our computers, on our phones already. Find out what you've already got in your systems that you could be using, that everybody could use, and make sure. And then create a dictionary of acronyms in your, every place I know has got AOBs and all sorts of things that nobody knows what they mean. Make sure you've got an acronym Bible from the get-go. When people come on board, they know what you're talking about, and those make a difference. And none of them cost anything, really.
No, really, really good one. And last question, although I will address the other two that I can see that have just come through as well. But how can a line manager approach line management of multiple neurodivergent employees in their team that all perhaps have very varying needs? To look after.
So one is, don't make assumptions. I think as a line manager is that sometimes we have our own internal biases, which says, oh, they've said they're autistic, so now I need to put them in a quiet room, or they said they're dyslexic, so I'm going to give them beige paper. So don't have any assumptions. Everybody in your team is different, whether they've got a neurodivergent label or we're all neurodiverse, right? So we're all going to be different in the way we think, act, process, and communicate. And also we've got lots of things in common. So find out the things you've got in common across your team, because some of us will be parents, we'll be single, we'll be working high. There'll be loads of touch points of things that we've got in common, and find those things, not just focusing on our differences. And then respect communication differences and understand that within your team, across your team, what are people's communication preferences, and have those multi-logs to understand how we communicate together, and all of that will prove better outcomes for the whole team.
Agree. There's a couple of other questions around access to diagnostic tools, how to deal with, perhaps as an individual, how to deal with a line manager who hasn't had any training, and also just some more targeted questions, particularly from a City and Guilds perspective, around what we're going to be doing. So we'll take some of those questions offline, and this is sort of our commitment to you, really, that this is just the beginning again of this conversation, and I'd really encourage you to keep coming forward and asking them. And what's been really interesting to me, I always, I'm a big champion for creating anonymous channels for all sort of topics, but in particular topics like this where they're perhaps more sensitive and people don't want to put their name to it sometimes. So I think I'm going to take as my own action on this, trying to find a way that we can collate some of these more personal questions in an anonymous way as well, offline, for people as well. So I think now we're going to bring on Charmaine, Lisa, Amy and Rachel, and I'm going to hand over to the lovely Charmaine to host this panel session. So over to you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Amanda. That was amazing. Thank you so much. And welcome, Amy, Lisa and Rachel. Lovely to have you on this session. So I've got a few questions for you, and obviously listening into the previous half of the session when we looked at the common themes and the data points, perhaps from the report itself. So perhaps if I start with you first, Rachel and Amy. So how do Specsavers then create an inclusive environment that supports neurodiverse employees? And what practices have you found to be the most effective in fostering success for individuals?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So we have introduced to the organisation a series of networks, one of them being our Neurodiversity Network, which has really given a forum for anybody who's part of that as an ally or someone that neurodiversity affects, to really speak about their experiences and be very it's a safe space to talk about it, so that we can look at what we can do differently, how we can change the narrative. We've had forums, haven't we, Amy, and information that where we've asked, like, what do you want us to do? How can we impact change for you? So that's kind of been one of our major starting points.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we do some other things as well around, you know, our recruitment team will ask somebody, for example, is there anything you need us to do to support you through this interview process? So it's only small things, and I don't think it's specifically calling out neurodiversity. It could be anything for that person. So it's trying to ask those things in a really open way that nobody feels singled out. It just feels like a general question, but people have the opportunity, if they feel comfortable, to open up and share.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that approach of being inclusive gives people the opportunity, and you can apply that across all of your recruitment practices. No, that's great. And with your network group, how are the members experiencing that?
So I'll start a little bit on that one. So I think our network group, so people mainly communicate on there initially via Teams. So we've got sort of quite a few open conversations going on there. I think we've got quite a good network there. People do chat quite a lot on there. So it might be somebody says, I found this resource that could be really useful for people. It could be somebody just saying, I've got this going on with my child. I'm trying to get an EHCP through at school. Where do I start? So there's so many different topics from different people about different things that people are really helpful and are really responsive on there, which I think is really good. It just gives people that place to speak to other people about. It might be about themselves, it might be about a family member or a child, different things, when they maybe might not have felt like they had somebody to talk to about it before.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful, important, just giving that space to share, and just knowing that you've had a similar experience to others, you're kind of not alone. No, that's lovely. Thank you. Lisa, I'm going to come over to you now and ask you a question. So can you share a little bit more about your own personal experience and how St Giles is committed to investing in neurodiverse talent, and any initiatives that you perhaps want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, thanks, Charmaine. So I have always been neurodivergent, obviously, but it wasn't until I got to university that I suddenly started to think. I was 31 and I was like, I don't understand. Like, I love what I'm doing, but I just can't focus. I can't do it. And I saw their ed psych in the university who diagnosed me with ADHD and Erland's syndrome. They gave me lots of tools and help, and really from there it was transformative. Sorry, my dog's trying to interfere here. It was quite transformative, really. However, I still didn't have the psychological safety to speak to my workplace at the time. And then when I joined St Giles, obviously the organisation is very much built on lived experience and kind of being who you are. So I developed quite a good relationship with one of our senior managers, which gave that foundation of psychological safety that I needed to be able to say, look, you know, I'm neurodivergent, and these are the things that I have to do to be like, additional in my role to be able to like function. And she was just like, what? I can't believe it. You know, for instance, if I got like an email on a policy was sent, I'd have to dissect it all, put it all into a Word document, color code it. And she was like, you're doing all of this? So from there, I sort of said, you know, if we recruit a lot of people who have had touch with the criminal justice system. We know that a lot of people in the criminal justice system are neurodivergent. So therefore, we must have staff that are neurodivergent that we don't know about. And I said, look, can I start up like a forum, a little bit like what Rachel and Amy were talking about, really. So that was in January 2022. And I've been leading on this forum, which has become more of a kind of neuro-inclusive practice forum. And we've had some like real successes, I think, just because, and I think this is not a very positive phrase really, but a dog with a bone is what people describe me as. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So we've rolled out this forum. We've got 35 members who are all really, you know, dead set on being passionate about what we're doing. You know, we're all working towards that common goal. And in the 2 years that we've been in this forum, we've changed our interview process. So we now have specific neuro-inclusive practice questions. So when someone applies for a job, Max, We ask specific questions around, do they want the interview questions in advance? Is there any specific that they might need? And again, that's not just around neurodiversity, but around other ways of kind of making it a level playing field, if you like. Shut up. We've got a new intranet, and I had input into all the intranet, the font sizes, the background colours, all those things that maybe organisations don't think about necessarily, but that do impact people. Because if you're having to work through an intranet every single day, but you cannot work out how to get through to it, you don't know which buttons you need to click, and people just don't use it. And then the organisation are not getting the best out of their people because they can't use their systems. We were using Do It Profiler tool. So when I first did the training with back in 2022 with City and Guilds, I went back and we had some licenses, and we were using that with some of our peers who come through the volunteer programme, and allowing them to kind of look at their own profiles. And as a result, staff reach out to me now, and they'll say, like, I've got a member of staff. Managers will reach out. I saw a question in the chat about how to get managers on board. And I think the fundamentals is the psychological safety. That's your foundation. If you can't create that, you're never going to have a workplace that accepts and adopts this culture of neuro-inclusive practice. But actually what you need is managers who will reach out and ask for that support. And I'm having that. People will message me and say, I've got a member of staff who's struggling. What can I do? And it's all about signposting and guiding, really. I'm not really telling anyone what to do necessarily, but signpost them into the right place. And then a manager or a line manager doesn't feel stupid for asking, because suddenly they don't have to be the expert in the room about everything. We've got someone leading a forum, and I'm not by any means an expert, and I'm not saying that I'm expert, but I think it's something that I am, driving that agenda forward. I've just developed a neuro-inclusive practice booklet, so that's going to be rolled out this month, and it's got all the hints and tips, really easy, simple things that, we're a charity, we don't have money to pay for things, but lots of hints and tips that people can use and do to try and make their working day more effective. And I think sometimes just having those little things can really make the world of difference. Like Amanda was saying, the immersive reader. I was telling a member of staff just last week used to use the dictate function. So they're doing case notes, and they were like, Lisa, I've got so many case notes, and I'm really struggling to get it down. And I said, look, when you're seeing a young person, get your phone, use your dictate, talk into it, send it to yourself, sort it out when you've got a minute, but at least it's all there. And they didn't even know that they could do that the dictate function was there. So it's not anything that we've had to pay for, but it's just signposting. And I talk about things like the Pomodoro technique and using headphones. I take headphones into the office with me. So things that are not expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. And quite often it's about having a listening ear, somebody who says, I know how you feel, and this is how we can do it. We're also rolling out some training. So I've been working with our skills centre, and we're going to be rolling out some neuro-inclusive practice training. We've got our first pilot on the 22nd of this month. So these are really big things in an organisation of 500 where you are working against the grain as an organisation. They've got they've got a strategy, they've got things that they want to work on, but I'm like, we're just going to be neuro-inclusive, like we're going to put it into everything. So I'm really trying to help other people see the benefits really of just accept everyone for who they are. And like I said, just listen to what people are telling you. If someone's struggling, let's look at why they're struggling. And they might not have a diagnosis, but I actually think in this day and age where you can't get diagnosis, it's not particularly relevant. Someone said about labels, and there's always this real stickler of a question about labeling. But you know what? We need labels, because without a diagnosis or without an idea of where I've got ADHD or I've got some dyslexia traits, what you're labelled with is negative stuff. You're labelled as lazy, you're labelled as unable, and that's not nice. So we label people anyway, so we might as well label them with something that's helpful, that will help them, find ways through. Yeah. Sorry, no. I've just really overrun with everything, haven't I? I'm so sorry. Once I go, Charmaine, that's it.
Thank you, Lisa. That was incredible. So much in there. But really what you're doing in your role is helping your managers to help you. So sharing what you need, how things work for you, what's going to support you at work, and then also feeding in from an organisation perspective in terms of recruitment, training. I love the toolkits that you're helping to shape. And we know that everybody's very, very different. So I think that's really helpful. The other thing that I also find interesting as well is the point that you raise about labels, because one of the things that we're doing at City and Guilds as part of National Inclusion Week, which was last week in a new week, we've sort of kind of run another campaign really to get employees to share information, and we know that people don't get that diagnosis. They may be undiagnosed, that might come later. And I don't know, a question, Rachel, perhaps, and Amy, for you is, how do we encourage people to kind of share that information so the label isn't negative and it's used in a positive way?
So I think going back to Lisa's point before as well about psychological safety, that was a really big thing for us when we started the network, because people, I think, have spent so long going through their childhood with, as you say, being labelled as the naughty or inattentive and all these different things. It was quite scary for people to start opening up to the network and as well as to their managers and things. So we've had quite a lot of people sharing their stories from across our Specsavers group. So that can be more senior people in like those head of roles. We've had them share their kind of diagnosis journey or their personal experiences, because it's just got people talking, and they kind of then will think, well, hold on, if so-and-so is sharing their story and they're up here in the organisation, it's okay. And I think that's been a really big thing for us, is just getting those senior voices and from across all of the organisation, people just to share their story and understanding everyone's experiences have been different. Some people do say it's my superpower, other people are saying it's been really, really hard for me actually. And I think it's having that range of stories and experiences that's really, really helped us get buy-in from people to actually go, okay, it is a safe place to talk, I'm okay to share my experiences. I think that's been a really big thing for us. Rachel, I don't know if there's anything else you would add on that.
Yeah, not really. I think, as you said, one of the things that we've done is similar to Lisa, we've rolled out neurodiversity awareness training to get the conversation flowing. We've made it a mandatory part of any onboarding, and kind of anybody in the organisation can access it, and really again put in their messages from our leaders about inclusivity and the support for understanding and just talking about how we can help each other, whether that no matter what kind of what the need is, just that actually it's better to have the conversation than to hide away from it. And that kind of, it also doesn't matter if you've got a medical condition, whatever it is, and whether you have that label or not. If you feel that you need something, then let's talk about it so we can support it.
So coming at it from that adjustments place, if you need reasonable adjustments, whatever those are, you don't need that diagnosis. I think getting that message out really clearly is really helpful. Lisa, I didn't know whether, yes, go on.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I also think it's about using like solution focused language. So if someone says to me, that person's lazy, or gosh, they're really, like, not that that happens in my workplace, but you need my personal life. I've got neurodivergent children. I hear lots of negative labels around it. And actually what I'll say is, well, could it be this? Or, you know, trying to shift the narrative into a more positive thing. So we all have struggles. Like Amanda said, we're all neurodiverse. That's what we call diverse, because we're all neurodiverse. But some people have more challenges than others. And I think I actually prefer to have a label that is the right label than all the things that I was labeled as a teenager, which was inattentive, talkative, lazy, can't be bothered. Those were all those things. And actually, I can own those things now and say, you know, I use the analogy of spoons. I quite often say I've run out of spoons. I have no spoons. So I'm going to have to leave that task. Before I might have said, someone might have said to me, like, why is she just not doing that? Like, that's really lazy, just not doing that task. Actually, I haven't got the capacity, headspace to do it right now. So I'm going to just put it to a side, and I can prioritize better by doing that. And I think I can adopt that within the teams. And like I said, I think within St. Giles, a lot of managers now will come to me and say, Lisa, can you help give me some guidance around how to do this? That's really positive. It's taken about 2 years to get to that point, and we're nowhere near, you know, where I would like the organisation to be. And I'm also nowhere near taking it in any direction, because I'm not, you know, I'm not at any senior level. But what I will do is continue to drive this narrative forward and try and make sure that I always just help other people to understand what might be going on in their teams or for themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just on that point of senior leadership, Rachel, and perhaps a question for you, I suppose. So how important is it to have leadership buy-in, and what's your experience being at Specsavers?
It's just, I don't think there's anything that can replace that. I think seeing your senior leaders talking about it, to actively taking it on and wanting to raise awareness and be part of that whole agenda of everything. I think that's what you need. You need leading from the top down, don't you, really? and I don't think you can replace that in any way. That's what helps implement that, like, psychologically safe space and so on. You need to know that the people that are managing you and the people that are managing them are going to be supportive of whatever you're going through and what help and adjustments you need, and that you are in a place where you're respected and valued for who you are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you. And there's a comment in the question section in the chat about that commitment starting at the top, because you need that to sort of support and push from the bottom, as you're doing, Lisa. Amy, I'm going to come to you with a question, actually. And this is one that comes up often, is how do you measure the impact then of productivity and well-being against these initiatives? And it's always, sometimes it's hard to measure. And yeah, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think it is a really hard one to measure, because what we don't want to do is go out there and be really prescriptive and saying, give us a vote on how successful this has been, or something like that makes people feel uncomfortable. So what we tend to do is do quite a few sort of polls through our Teams group where people can anonymously share their feedback on things, and as well just through that anecdotal feedback. So we do we call them our sort of ND coffee mornings. So basically through the network, we'll just put coffee mornings on, virtual ones, so that people, because we've got obviously people all over the place within Specsavers, we'll put those on and we'll use those as conversations. So what's on people's minds, what's going well, what's not going so well. So we'll use those sort of more informal environments to get that feedback on what people are seeing, hearing, feeling. But also we have got like a mailbox people can share feedback with, things like that. But yeah, we do it probably more informally to understand how people are finding things. We'll ask quite often for suggestions on, what's on people's minds, what could we be focusing on as a network right now. So we do a lot of sort of more informal ways like that through the network, rather than regular rate it 1 to 5 type of feedback mechanisms.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for that. Amanda, I'm just going to bring you in on this question as well, just to follow on the measuring of the impact, and, what would you like to sort of share?
I think picking up from what Amy was saying, really thinking about the feedback you get, listening to the people in your organisation is really powerful. Measuring, talking to people who leave the organisation is useful as well. When you get feedback, and that's one of the things I think this year in the index, we want that people's words as well as numbers, do you know what I mean, as well, about what their experiences are. I think the ERG's ability, or affinity groups can be terribly important to listen what's working and what's not, because it can be a safe place to share that information, then to feed that, but back that with senior leadership. I mean, hearing from Lisa and Amy and Rachel about what they're doing, they're listening to their communities and then responding to those communities by providing the tools and the support that they require. And I think it is that loop of where are we, what are we doing, is it working?
Yeah,
I think neuro inclusivity is very different to something like gender, right?
Yeah.
Right, because it's not that easy to define, but neuro inclusion and neurodivergent traits are not easy. You can't box people, right, in the similar sort of way. And because of all the challenges we've said about getting a diagnosis, the right diagnosis, do I want a diagnosis? You can't have these very hard metrics to go, we've got 3 of these and 4 of these and 5 of these, we're doing well. So I think we do need to have some of those qualitative measures of, on the ground, are we keeping and attracting and retaining talent? And what are we hearing from people in terms of their experiences? Knowing that people's lives, all of our lives, vary hugely from time to time for lots of different reasons. Some of them have got nothing to do with being neurodivergent. They're just being alive, in a complex world. And I think we've just got to be well-being, retention, your name, what people see of you, the values you've got plays out in the end, and you attract talent. Are you getting the people you want in the jobs you've got? And if you are, and you're seeing people progress and stay, I think those are good measures.
No,
But
absolutely.
Keeping critical, I think, is important.
No, and I like that way you say that kind of like loop of where are we now, because also that things change. And I notice with my son sometimes I think, right, we've got that cracked, we've got that strategy, it's working really well, and then it changes and then there's something else, so it sort of moves on and it's different. So I think it's continuous as well.
It is, and you know that in workplaces you're doing your job, suddenly where you're doing the job changes, or who you're doing your job with, or the team changes, and that's that dynamic thing. We are not, static. The tasks we do, the environment we're in, the person we are change. All of those things change, and that's why those quick "where are you, how are you doing" check-ins make such a difference. It isn't like we've given you the paper 5 years ago, and the software, off you go, you're done now. It's about how do we ensure you're still doing your job as well as you can. And I think it's that ongoing dialogue that makes a difference.
So I wanted to ask Amanda as well, that when we think about who's doing this well, are there any particular industries or sectors that are kind of really embracing, neurodiversity? And
yeah, so I think it's an interesting one. Well, we've got, 2 examples of organisations that are doing it well. 3, City and Guilds, Specsavers, St Giles Trust. And what are they doing? They're listening, they're listening and understanding the people in their organisations. I work with engineering companies, some of the fintech, some of the pharma companies, some of the IT companies who are really thinking about that as well. I think we're in a dynamically changing world where we've got AI popping up left, right, and centre. There's things that are going on that are changing very fast. And I think it's those organisations that are continuing to have these conversations, going, okay, what have we got now that's working for you? That, you think about it, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been having a Zoom conversation like this we're doing today. Now we're hearing Microsoft Office, there's loads of things on it that you can use. I uploaded something this morning, a document that I've written, uploaded it into a new AI tool, and it generated a podcast for me in 5 minutes. Right? Wow.
Yes.
A 15-minute podcast in 5 minutes uploading this. So we can only keep having these conversations about how we support people. But at the same time, we've got to realise, like Lisa's saying, there are about 50% of people going through the justice system who are in the communities who do not have access to technology. And we need to make sure that adjustments are human-centred and we don't leave people out of this conversation at all times. And that is the heart of, I think, what the neuro-inclusivity is not saying, these are what we can do for you, because you've got the tech. And for the rest of you, there's nothing, because we're just perpetuating the gaps that exist in society already and just widening them, I think.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, that's really, really helpful. And I think before I hand back to Polly to kind of wrap up this session, maybe I'm being a bit ambitious here, but I was just going to come to each of you for one bit of advice, the most important bit of advice that you would give to everybody listening on our call. I'm going to start with you, Rachel.
Oh, that's a tough one. One bit of advice. I think it's about just having the conversation. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. I think just by talking about any of it, asking how you can help if you're managing somebody, the worst that somebody can say is actually, no, I don't need any help, or no, I don't want anything. But actually, if you open that conversation, you'll find that you've probably get a good response. You can start to help and
Lovely.
Improve that relationship.
Lovely. So the conversation. Thank you. Amy, I'll come to you next.
So yeah, completely echo what Rachel said. But then I think as well, it's looking for the small things. I think sometimes it can sound really scary and daunting for organisations to go, oh my gosh, how do we face into this? But I think sometimes there's really small things that can be done. Like there's a few little things we've done at Specsavers that are so small that they almost feel insignificant, but actually to the people who it matters to, it makes a big difference. Like we were asked to engage in the review of the uniform relaunch. And actually we talked about the materials, the seams, the labels, really small things, but to people that makes a big difference. And we used to have a pre-booked desk system. Actually, for some people that didn't work. So we've said, if you need to have the same desk each week, each day, let us know and we can get that flagged with facilities. So again, really small things that seem minute to other people, but actually to individuals that matters to, it makes a big difference. So I think it's thinking about the small things as well. It's not always a big task, a big thing.
Excellent. Thank you. I love that. Thanks, Amy. Lisa, I'm going to come to you next.
Mine would be find somebody in a senior position who can back you. Because actually, if you haven't got that somebody in the senior leadership who can get right behind what you're trying to do, it's a really hard thing to battle. I think organizationally, you've got lots of strategies, CEOs have got things they want to achieve, and then the C leadership, and actually you're coming in with this neuro-inclusive stuff and trying to, you know, we've all got EDI, and that's fine, but try and find someone, because for me, if I hadn't had that senior management backing me back in October 2021, and there's no way that I would have been able to make the change that we've made to date now. So yeah, that's my advice. Find someone in senior management and hound them till they back you. Know, find someone who's on the same page.
Oh, lovely, thanks, Lisa. And last, over to you, Amanda.
Well, my bet is please complete the survey, right? The more of you who do so, the more information we've got. And then I will synthesize that and report back to you. And the more examples of good practice and challenges, the more we understand as a community what works and what doesn't. And as we're hearing, a lot of things are what appear to be small, but actually have massive impact. And I think sometimes we underestimate the value of a conversation, the value of checking in, the value of those seams that are irritating and you want to rip off. You know, they're things that other people might see as insignificant are highly significant. And that's what we want to share. So tell 5 people to tell 5 people to tell 5 people, because I want us to get more information this year than we've ever had before. We can feed that back, and that's my promise.
Lovely, thank you all so much. And I'll hand back over to you, Polly.
Thank you, Charmaine. That was a perfect snippet into exactly why we should complete the survey. And I think just building on what Amanda said, you know, Amanda's explained her commitment, but our commitment at City and Guilds as well is to continue championing this, not just for us, for our own organisation or our own personal gain, but actually this is so that we can break down these barriers across society, across organisations, for all individuals, so that everyone is sort of on a level playing field, really, to not just accessing skills to enter work, but also to stay in work and continue developing and thriving. You know, I'm all about thriving, not surviving. You know, we can all survive, but let's just try and thrive a bit. Just a sort of practical thing, not to put you off, but in terms of the survey, you will be asked to register, create an account. Please don't be put off by that. You're encouraged up front to create a username and that doesn't identify back to you. That's just part of the platform so that we can go in and you can then go in and complete the survey. It's not a 2-minute job. We need you to sit down and really consider what you're putting in terms of answers. So please do carve out the time to do it. The good news is you've got a good chunk of time to complete the survey. So officially open now, which was the whole purpose of this webinar, to launch it. And it will be open until sort of mid-December time, before Christmas anyway. There's a comment just been put in the chat around a LinkedIn post. And again, this is where we really rely on you to comment, like, share, engage, because as Amanda said, we just need the really, really good sample base. The more people that complete it, the more likely it is to have significant impact and reach and support more people, which is the whole purpose of this topic area. So thank you to all of our panelists, speakers, co-hosts, co-pilots in this session, and thank you for giving your time to join the session today, and we look forward to coming back with to you in the new year with the results from the survey. And of course, please do reach out to any of us on LinkedIn or email if you've got any questions that you want to filter through completely anonymously and confidential. I can give you that commitment from myself, Charmaine and Amanda on the screen now. So thank you very much. Take care and see you in the new year with the results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.